My name is Lisa Brody, and everybody watches AcessTV.org. Peace.
Like this. Ba-boom, ba-boom. Do it like that. Yeah. Ba-boom.
This is Jonathan Small again, broadcasting today, September the 4th, from AcessTV.org studios in downtown Hartford, during the Small Report, basically giving you daily over-the-air internet access report program that could be seen all over the country and all over the world through different technology forms as well. Basically, I'm going to try to address a topic to address many different issues that simultaneously operates throughout the course of a year. Basically, a very good program yesterday that I was able to also look at here on the AcessTV.org conversation. Two extreme guests, Dr. Kuba Asagai and Femi Bogle Asagai. And, you know, I recommend everybody to look at that particular program if you didn't get a chance to see it. That was broadcast yesterday. But basically, sometime when you're trying to figure out what to do on a multitude of issues combined with so many different factors, it could be a long, grueling task to really come to the type of results that you want to come along with. But it's still worth the effort and the process to go towards trying to reach whatever you're looking to obtain. But sometime on the short term, you got to try to fix whatever you're dealing with the best way you know how. Now, many parts of our country have had the so-called need for a summit. Basically, a summit is you try to get a group of key people together that represents the best interests of the community. They try to figure out, you know, what would be the starting point to work towards getting something done. Many times the summit comes with one form and then it's a re-summit. It's more to the name just of a summit. You just basically have a major problem and you're trying to come up with a strategy to fix the problem. I mean, you hear summits on a national level, sometime in a political realms. You hear it on a local level. Community grassroots organizations try to work on an agenda, work on a plan, present it to your legislative, and try to see what can come out of it. The bottom line, I would say, I don't know about the rest of the country. Hartford is a capital urban city that faces many levels of challenges and obstacles, and you could say we have a unique city, a small city geographically, population based, but we deal with all of the issues that any larger city deals with, and that could be good or that could be bad. Obviously, the bad part is you have the major problems. So over the course of the past 20 to 25 years, every now and then a group of leaders or people who represent certain community groups try to come up with the idea, and they usually call it a summit. I remember not that long ago, the former mayor of Hartford, Thurman L. Milner, came to me with the proposal of, he just felt, this was in 2003, that with all of the issues that's going on, try to work towards a so-called summit. He passed the word out. It never came to be. We might have had some summits before that period of time, but again, it's the results. It's not the so-called that you have a summit, you get people together, you try to work and advocate something, and then when you look back a year later, it seems like nothing was really accomplished, at least not for the good of the community that you was trying to advocate the summit for. Now it seems like of days, many people have summits and meetings and agendas for their own personal gain. You know, you get a group of people who are trying to get something directly for themselves. It might benefit the few people that's involved with their community organizations, but the majority of your residents in many cases don't really get anything out of the so-called summit. So I would say it's a lot more to advocating for a so-called summit than just the idea of the word. You know, trying to get a group of people together. Do I really believe on a large scale the type of issues that's going to be resolved through a so-called agenda or urban plan or summit is possible to happen anytime soon? I would say no. I would say things can be corrected. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the issues that you have cannot be fixed. But do I say it's going to happen through a so-called summit? I mean, unless you get some real serious-minded people on many different levels. And I think, unfortunately, anytime you bring politics involved and you got to go through the political system, that's where I think many times you run into your major problems at. I think the people in the community pretty much have given up in some cases on the political system. We have a very high apathy level. People don't really believe in too much things changing through the so-called political system, through the economic system, through the social system that exists. And again, I'm trying to address a short-term issue. I'm not trying to get into a deep-rooted problem of historical levels, because I mean that takes another form of so-called group of people trying to work together, and that's going to be a long process. You're not going to get people mindsets to change just at the drop of a dime. I mean, you can put the spark that can get a person to start thinking and looking at life a lot differently. You can do that, but I think the results you might be looking for when you have the Pan-Africanism movements that you're trying to do on a worldwide level, I think if you want to see all of those issues fixed just like that, I don't see that process happening. I think that's where I come up with the so-called idea of maybe you try to get people the direct resources that they need until they get their mindsets and their knowledge base in order to start to move in that so-called direction. The basic realities, I would say everybody has to have food to eat, have to have the shelter on your head, clothes on your back, the basic forms of medical insurance. But when you start to see a lot of resources slipping from people, you start to see a lot of underlying problems building up, you know, homelessness growing, unemployment stagnated, not really being reduced, deplorable education standards. Even if you're not, again, not getting to the root issues of what people think who advocate on the Pan-Africanism movement really believe is the best long-term solution, you got to start to deal with what's right in front of you till you get to that point. And I think the hopelessness mindset that many people have when they try to make a proposal for their best interest, because sometimes it could be even difficult to come up with a so-called summit or plan within your own within your own household. I think that's really your starting point. You know, make sure that where you live at directly is in order. If you got a dysfunctional family, a dysfunctional household, and you're trying to advocate for people in the community to come in now and be part of the solution to fix your problem, I mean, you can always turn to social workers, other resource groups that exist out there that might have some assistance toward trying to fix whatever particular issue that you're dealing with. Obviously, you as a member of your own household and family should be at the focal point of deciding how it is that you want the situation fixed that you're dealing with. When you start to get into the city or town that you live in now and your issues are affected by other people's decisions, that's when you get into a lot of complications, because now you got to hope or wait or go along with somebody else's idea. Many times people try to get these summits together and you find out that everybody wants to pass their own agenda, everybody wants to pass their own decision, and nobody wants to take orders. Everybody wants to be able to sit with the right people that's going to determine where things are going to go at. If they don't get directly the link that they need, they don't want anything to do with it. And then the whole city or the whole community ends up, again, pushed to the side, and then nothing really gets resolved, and the problems builds up over a long period of time to where we are here today. When Martin Luther King was working on the Poor People's March, he had, I believe, a so-called plan to deal with another side of many issues on an economic level. You know, it's always hypothetical to say what could have come out of the so-called Poor People's March. He did have some tremendous progress with the sanitation workers in Memphis, Tennessee. You might look at a sanitation job as nothing to write home about, but you do have some good benefits. You have somewhat of a steady career. So I think some things you could look at that period of time to where we were at to where we are today. Obviously, he was coming to a realization that the civil rights movements we had really came a long way towards accomplishing, but it was another obstacle that was presenting ourselves in '68 going into the '70s, that it was a lot of economic disparities, a lot of substandard housing conditions, poor educational systems. And again, you try to group all of these issues together. You try to separate one from another, which is what you have today. You have people who work on housing, people who work on educational issues, people who work on economic development issues, and you try to grade where things are at. And again, if you look at most cities, urban cities, I mention that quite often, but it's spreading beyond just that. You look at the grade level and you don't really see what you need to see. I think you could look at some examples throughout our country where you have viable communities that seems to have everything intact. I don't even want to address the suburbs. I already like to use examples of a so-called city, urban city that would have any particular issue that any distressed urban city would have, and to see how they're doing things and to see what's working for them. Now, if you got problems hanging over your head, drug dependencies, drug underground climate, illegal guns, I think that's going to make it difficult. I mean, now again, you got to get certain specialized people who work on those issues, work with law enforcement, try to remove or reduce these tremendous barriers, and then see where you can start to plant the new seeds. Remember, when I'm saying a summit, I'm talking about a so-called short-term solution towards building towards a long-term solution. You can get your law enforcement, your police chiefs, your mayors, your state representatives, your people who run certain grassroots organizations, people who are so-called community activists, specialized people who run certain think tank organizations, and you try to get, let's say, 12 to 15 people sitting at the key positions. They are working on a strategy, you know, maybe once a week, and then see where things go at. And then if you want to call it a so-called summit or whatever you want to call it, but it has some type of intention on really reducing and resolving some of the real major problems that needs to be resolved. Again, it's not mandated that a city or a system has to have, believe it or not, a so-called summit. You know, as long as the laws under the regulations or the laws of man is being uplifted. I mean, you have corruptions, you have no management, you have mismanagement in forms of city government. And again, you got to always look at trying to deal and fix with that problem. So I don't know if a summit is, again, going to happen. I think at some point, look at the people that live in most of these areas where you have all of these major problems at. Maybe the best summit I could advocate for them is just try to work on the summit within your own household. You know, get a small group of people and friends together and work on that particular plan. I mean, you know, people like the Asa guys used to have the so-called lectures at their bookstores, working in the heart of, you know, our urban areas in the north end of Hartford. A lot of things happen over that period of time where that doesn't exist. We might have outgrown those type of lectures. We have certain agencies or advocacy groups that meet once a week. They have presidents, vice presidents. We have the so-called African American Alliance here in Hartford. But even if you have those things intact, still look at the results. I mean, if you're not really satisfied with what you see existing, then you have a right to feel that way. The harder part is, you know, what will you be able to do to fix the problem? Do you think a summit in your own household is the starting point? Do you think the summit is part of your environmental community problems? I mean, are you interacting in both levels that's causing problems? You know, your household and yourself and your group of people and your family is bringing down the so-called community, or is the community bringing down your household and your families? Hopefully I can come up with a solution. You know, hopefully I can maybe look towards a part 2 segment of, you know, what is the best way to go towards fixing a problem. Maybe a summit, again, is not realistically the solution or realistically something that's going to happen. But just give you something today to really look into. You might hear that word come up after the elections. You might hear it before the election. There's so many ways you can look at the so-called summit. I mentioned something as far back as 2003. Me and the former mayor of Hartford, Thurman L. Milner, was talking for about a month or so about the so-called summit. It never happened. We almost 10 years later, we have the same major issues that needs to be addressed towards some plan today. Again, this is Jonathan Small. I enjoyed doing the Small Report today, September the 4th. I hope everybody was able to pick up something on today's program. And until tomorrow, I wish everybody the best of health and God bless you. And again, please tune in to AcessTV.org Monday through Friday. Thank you.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Do it like this. Ba-boom. Ba-boom. Do it like that.